The Committee on Homeland Security Subcommittee on Emergency Management and Technology will come to order. Without objection, the chair may declare the subcommittee in recess at any point. The purpose of this hearing is to assess security, best practices, highlight challenges, and understand how the federal government, state government, local law enforcement, and the private sector coordinate with one another for mass gathering events. Without objection, the gentleman from California, Mr. Correa, and the gentlewoman from New Jersey, Ms. Poe, are permitted to sit on the dais and ask questions to the witnesses. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I also would like to take the time to thank the staff for their hard work on this hearing. Today, we will discuss the important and timely topic of security, preparedness, and coordination for mass gathering events. By their very nature, these events draw large crowds in concentrated areas, making them attractive targets for malicious actors. Ensuring their safety requires complex coordination among federal, state, and local authorities, including law enforcement and emergency services. It also requires close collaboration with partners in the sports and entertainment industries. I witnessed the scale of these challenges firsthand when I led a congressional delegation to New Orleans to survey security preparation for the Super Bowl following the New Year's Eve attack on Bourbon Street. That incident and others like it serve as a stark reminder that terrorist threats persist and underscore our responsibility to safeguard such gatherings. And these events will only continue to grow in prominence and frequency. In the year ahead, the United States will host several major international sporting events, including the 2025 FIFA Cup World Cup, the 2026 FIFA World Cup, and the 2028 Summer Olympics and Paralympics in Los Angeles. These events present enormous opportunities, delivering economic benefits while also showcasing our great nation on the international stage. But they also bring significant security challenges. Take the 2026 World Cup, for example. 76 matches will be played in 11 U.S. cities with an estimated 6.5 million fans traveling to the United States. Not to mention, it will also be played in the midst of the celebration of America's 250th anniversary. To meet these unprecedented demands, DHS has convened an all-hands-on-deck approach to ensure they are safe and secure. CISA is working to secure critical infrastructure. The Office of Intelligence and Analysis is sharing threat information, and CBP and CIS are carefully vetting and processing international travelers. I'm also proud of this committee's leadership in addressing this topic. 3 weeks ago, the committee passed its budget reconciliation recommendation, including $625 million in additional preparedness funding for the 2026 World Cup and $1 billion for the 2028 Olympics. I support these measures, and I hope funds can be distributed as quickly and effectively as possible. Additionally, following President Trump's executive order convening a White House task force on the FIFA World Cup, this committee established its own bipartisan task force on enhancing security for special events in the United States. I applaud Vice Chairman McCall, who will be chairing the task force, and Chairman Green for their leadership on this issue. And I'm honored to have been selected to join this task force. I hope today's hearing will offer valuable insight and inform future task force discussions. Many challenges must be addressed to improve security, preparedness for these major events. As we discussed last month, unmanned aerial aircraft systems can act as a force multiplier for DHS's mission. However, they can also be used for evil and unlawful purposes. You may remember in 2017, a drone dropped leaflets over 2 sporting stadiums in violation of temporary flight restrictions. It doesn't take very much to imagine to see how the same technology could have been used for a much deadlier purpose. And as for, I previously mentioned, the New Orleans attack demonstrated the danger that vehicles pose to mass gatherings and the need to ensure effective countermeasures are in place. Additionally, the fan behavior of these events can be erratic and seen during the 2024 Copa America match when thousands of fans breach physical security barriers and overwhelm law enforcement. These examples reflect the importance of robust security planning to ensure events are conducted peacefully, that all spectators remain safe, and everyone has a good time. I'm thankful for the participation of our witnesses today. I look forward to their perspective as well as what Congress and the federal government can do to support these events. Again, thank you all for being here, and I hope we can have a productive and bipartisan discussion as we seek to improve security ahead of these mass gathering events. I now recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, Mr. Kennedy, for his opening statements.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you all here today, this afternoon. I'd like to start on a somber note by remembering our colleague and good friend, Congressman Jerry Connolly, who passed away earlier this morning. Jerry was a passionate public servant, a tireless champion for working families, and a defender of democracy. His loss will certainly be felt deeply in Congress and in Virginia's 11th district. He was actually one of the first members that I met when I came here to Washington, D.C. I believe he was the first member to stop by my office before I was sworn in last year to say hello. He welcomed me as a fellow Irishman and offered me kindness that I'll never forget. We all knew him as a consummate gentleman and certainly a leader, and again, a dear friend. So our thoughts are certainly with his wife, Kathy, their daughter, Caitlin, and the entire Connolly family on this difficult day. Now, turning to today's Emergency Management and Technology Subcommittee hearing on mass gatherings, I want to thank all of the witnesses for joining us here today. I also want to extend my gratitude to the staff for their efforts in making today's hearing come together. My thoughts, and I believe all of our thoughts and concerns, are with those in Kentucky, Missouri, Indiana, Virginia, and everyone who was impacted by the tornadoes and storms that hit just over this past weekend. Nearly 30 lives were lost in the devastation. And we know far too often natural disasters are continually posing significant threats to our nation, and we have to ensure that we are as prepared as possible to respond and meet the moment. Shortly after the storm, it became clear that the local National Weather Service office in Kentucky is one of 4 offices nationwide without enough staff. National Weather Service offices, in part, are the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration offices as well. And those are the offices that provide critical tornado forecasting that is then transmitted into emergency alerts so that communities can prepare. The future of emergency management in this country is dependent on the kinds of investments we make in these missions and the staff that keep them running. So I am certainly concerned that the president's budget request cuts to NOAA by at least 27%. And I fear that this will only increase the level of devastation that we saw this past weekend when it comes to future emergencies. Additionally, we are days away from the start of hurricane season, and the chaos at the Federal Emergency Management Agency continues to hinder our ability to support communities. So this won't just affect responses to natural disasters. FEMA's Preparedness and Grants Administration will have a direct impact on the security of mass gatherings like the 2026 FIFA World Cup and the 2028 Olympics. And we know that mass gatherings don't happen in a vacuum. And having strong emergency management infrastructure that can respond is going to be essential to ensuring that the 2 premier once-in-a-generation sporting events that we're discussing today, among other mass gathering events, are as seamless as possible. In preparing for these mass gathering events, State and local first responders across the country are scaling up. And in some cases, like the two major events, the Olympics and the FIFA World Cup, these are historic visitations, record investments for the communities and states and potential high security risks. And the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Intelligence and Analysis conducts the annual Homeland Threat Assessment. And its publication for 2025 warned that the terrorism threat environment throughout our country remains high. Given this, it's critical that the federal government make good on its promise to provide states and local communities with FEMA Preparedness grant funding so we're ready to respond and mitigate any threats during these high-profile events. Again, I'm concerned that President Trump's budget proposes a $646 million cut to FEMA's non-disaster grant programs. Cuts like these severely undermine our ability to detect threats, support our local law enforcement partners, and prepare for major events and mass gatherings. Now it's time to shore up the FEMA grant program like the Homeland Security Grant Program, which includes the State Homeland Security Program, the Urban Area Security Initiative, and Operation Stone Garden. I look forward to hearing about the importance of these programs from our witnesses, as well as ways that we can continue to partner with each and every one of you, supporting law enforcement, supporting the private sector and federal agencies in a collaborative, collective way so that we can secure these mass gathering events and make them as safe as possible for those in attendance and those in the vicinity. Again, thank you all for your service to our country, to your respective communities, and I look forward to our conversation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ranking Member Kennedy. Other members of the subcommittee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. I'm very pleased to have such an important panel of witnesses before us today. I ask that the witnesses please rise and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give before this Committee on Homeland Security of the United States of Representatives, House of Representatives, will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Please be seated. Let the record reflect that all witnesses have answered in the affirmative. I would like now to formally introduce our witnesses. Sheriff Donald Barnes is the sheriff-coroner of the Orange County Sheriff's Department. He has served the Orange County for over 35 years, having started in 1989. At the national level, he is the Major County Sheriffs of America's Vice President for Homeland Security and also chair of their Intelligence Committee. Mr. Junell is the Chief Security Officer at Live Nation Entertainment, where he leads their corporate security program that helps keep employees, guests, and artists safe. Prior to his work at Live Nation, Mr. Junell served as a special agent with the United States Secret Service, where he served as the agency's Presidential Protective Division. Mr. Jeremy Hammond is the Assistant Commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, where he plays a pivotal role in some of the nation's most high-profile collegiate sporting events, ensuring a seamless experience for fans, athletes, and stakeholders alike. Before joining the Southeastern Conference, Mr. Hammond's held senior roles with organizations such as Ingress Events, WWE, and the Georgia Dome, developing deep expertise in event management, public safety, planning, and venue operation. I thank the witnesses again for being here today. I now recognize Sheriff Barnes for 5 minutes to summarize his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Strong and Ranking Member Kennedy, for holding today's hearing. I'm here today representing the Major County Sheriffs of America, the professional law enforcement association of the largest sheriff's offices across the country. Our members serve more than 1/3 of the United States population. As Sheriff of Orange County, I lead an agency of more than 4,000 people who provide exceptional public safety services to the 3.1 million residents in Orange County. As a major population center and popular tourist destination on the Southern California region, mass gathering events are a regular occurrence in our AOR. Nationwide, managing the security for mass gathering events and addressing associated public safety impacts largely fall on the shoulders of sheriffs and our partners in city and municipal police departments. Today's focus is on the once-in-a-generation events, the FIFA World Cup, the Olympics, and other events, as mentioned, that will be coming to our country. It's been 3 decades since our nation hosted these events so close to each other. The FIFA World Cup of 1994 and the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta were significant moments for our country. 30 years later, we will host these events in Southern California and in a dozen other regions under a much more complex, rapidly evolving threat environment. We have greater technology available to assist us with our security efforts, but risks associated with cyber attack are ever present. Our border is more secure since the beginning of the year, but many of the nefarious actors who entered our country over the last 4 years remain, and their locations are unknown. An event that hosts visitors from all corners of the world brings with it tensions from the multitude of conflicts occurring around the globe. We must always remember that we have no national security or homeland security without local law enforcement efforts. We can be successful in our goal of a safe World Cup and Olympics if we use proven strategies and we are properly resourced with the right mix of people and technology. Strategies that are most worthy of this committee's focus and efforts include: 1, communication among law enforcement partners. Sharing intelligence information across levels of government is critical. This type of communication can best occur through the network of fusion centers across our country. In Orange County, the Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center responds to college protests, concern and conflicts in the Middle East. Fusion centers play a central role in communicating intelligence to personnel on the ground, resulting in safe conclusions of these events. Continued and enhanced federal funding is essential to preparedness, providing support for strategic planning, and maintaining operational and situational awareness. The UWASI and SHISHGAP grants mentioned in Operation Stone Garden provide funding that supports intelligence sharing through fusion centers, builds critical incident response capabilities, and creates federal-local partnerships that strengthen national security. Second is the use of the Incident Command System. The Orange County Sheriff's Department's long-used ICS, known as NIMS, SIMS, or whatever it might be at other levels, for emergent events and planning for special events. It's a standardized protocol that creates command control, communication coordination at all levels of government. It's been a proven scalable model that can be applied to a variety of public safety incidents and events, and my department has used it across our operational platform. Law enforcement across multiple jurisdictions needs to be on the same page, particularly with regard to events like the Olympics and World Cup. Also, adaptation by federal agencies will ensure better integration when they work with state and local agencies during these mass gathering events. Briefly, unmanned aerial systems will also be part of any security strategy. Drones have proven to be a successful, beneficial tool for public safety and emergency response, and we anticipate that drone capabilities will be leveraged extensively to help the World Cup and Olympic sites. Congressional support through legislation like H.R. 1058, the Drone Act, co-sponsored by Representatives Correa and Nels, can help. At the same time, the unauthorized misuse of drones represents a significant security concern for mass events and the public's safety. Lawmakers must establish a legal framework that provides broad-based but carefully regulated authority for locals to deploy and operate counter-UA systems. This framework must be supported by funding, training, oversight, and transparency. And finally, ask for your support in alleviating resource impacts on local law enforcement. The number of simultaneous events in multiple cities will put tremendous stress on resources across the country. Federal grant funding to help offset these costs, which has been provided during previous Olympics, will help us maintain operations associated with these events while also fulfilling our day-to-day law enforcement responsibilities to our communities. I thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Sheriff Barnes. I now recognize Mr. Junell for 5 minutes to summarize his opening statements. Mr. Junell.
Chairman Strong, Ranking Member Kennedy, and other members of the subcommittee, I'm John Junell, Chief Security Officer at Live Nation Entertainment. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss critical safety issues facing the live entertainment industry. 2024 marked an historic milestone for live music. Live Nation hosted more than 54,000 events, including 137 festivals, welcoming more than 151 million fans. and 2025 is already on track to surpass those benchmarks with more stadium shows scheduled than ever before and record demand for both concerts and festivals. As the scale and complexity of live events grow, we know security measures need to enhance as well. I oversee the development and implementation of security protocols and lead the efforts to collaborate with local and federal authorities to help keep fans, artists, and workers safe. Our commitment to safety is unwavering. We've continuously advanced our protocols and technologies, a dedication that earned us the Safety Act designation award from DHS. But we recognize there are limits to what we can do, especially when it comes to the emerging threats posed by drones. As a private entity, we lack the authority to counter drone activity, and law enforcement often lacks necessary capabilities and authority to respond. This is why it's essential that more events are covered by FAA-issued temporary flight restrictions, or TFRs, and counter-UAS authority be expanded to local law enforcement. Drone use continues to grow rapidly. The FAA recently reported that more than 1 million drones are now registered in the U.S., a 160% increase since 2019. Given the rise in usage and high-profile drone-related incidents, expanding TFR authority is needed. With the context in mind, I'd like to highlight several key areas where we believe Congress can take further action. We commend Congress for passing Section 935 of the FAA Reauthorization Act last year, which expands FAA authority to issue drone-related TFRs for certain large-scale events. The provision allows TFR coverage for stadium concerts with at least 30,000 attendees and festivals with at least 100,000. Live Nation was supportive of this provision, but knows more work must be done to mitigate the airborne threats at live events. To maximize the impact of Section 935, it's essential that the FAA, state and local law enforcement agencies, and other stakeholders are fully aware of this new authority and equipped to utilize it. Ultimately, success depends on the venue or local law enforcement reaching out to federal law enforcement agencies, federal law enforcement's willingness to request the TFR, and the FAA's readiness to approve it. Without coordination and follow-through, this new provision falls short of its intention to create more secure live events. Further recognition of this provision enhancement is needed, including a clear, prominent online process for submitting a TFR request for all live events, including concerts and festivals, and the addition of a dedicated submission form to streamline the process for law enforcement officials. Additionally, we ask Congress to consider lowering the current thresholds to ensure that more events can benefit from the protective coverage of TFRs. Last year alone, we had more than 1,000 shows in venues with a capacity of 10,000. We asked Congress to lower the attendance threshold to 10,000 for events taking place outdoors. These proposed adjustments would significantly expand safety coverage for high-density events that are currently excluded despite facing comparable security risks. We also urge Congress to build on the progress made in last year's FAA bill by strengthening airspace protections to include not only unmanned aircraft systems, but also small manned aircrafts. We appreciate the bicameral and bipartisan attention this issue has received and appreciate members for recognizing these evolving threats. Finally, we urge Congress to grant mitigation authority to qualified local law enforcement agencies. When a drone enters restricted airspace, rapid response is critical. But federal authorities may not always be positioned to act quickly. Allowing trained local agencies to respond under federal guidance would significantly enhance real-time capabilities and strengthen the effectiveness of TFRs. Similarly, we appreciate the bicameral and bipartisan attention to this issue and commend members for their efforts. On behalf of Live Nation Entertainment, thank you all for your leadership on these important issues, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Junell. I now recognize Mr. Hammond from the Southeastern Conference for 5 minutes to summarize his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Strong and Ranking Member Kennedy and the honorable members of this subcommittee for the opportunity to participate in today's hearing. My name is Jeremy Hammond, and I have the honor of serving the 16-member institutions of the Southeastern Conference as Assistant Commissioner. In my role, I lead our efforts to produce world-class championship events, including the SEC Football Championship, and I work with our member institutions to develop event management policies and procedures, including public safety best practices. I come to you today not only as somebody that is involved in the day-to-day management of public events, but as someone who's deeply invested in safeguarding the environments where friends and families come together to celebrate traditions, community, and competition, because that's really what we all seek together. However, we cannot share those experiences without the assurance that we can enjoy them in safe, well-managed environments. Just as the rapid advancement of technology and weaponry has evolved global conflicts, the same can be said for the threats we must protect against at our favorite sporting event, concert, festival, or convention. As cities across the United States prepare to host the World Cup and the Olympics over the coming years, there is no group of professionals better positioned or prepared to plan for, manage, and mitigate challenges than those we call friends and colleagues here in this country. The World Cup and the Olympics obviously are the two largest international events in existence. They present a provocative and highly visible target for bad actors. However, as my counterparts here today may agree, large public events with high threat profiles are produced 365 days a year in this country. Whether in metropolitan cities or small college towns, college athletics welcomes fans week after week from kickoff in late August to the last out in May. Chairman Strong from Alabama can attest. In the SEC, we like to say, it just means more. During Saturdays in the fall, our campuses grow to the populations of a mid-sized city. In 2024, 5 SEC schools averaged 100,000 fans in their venues at home football games. Accounting for schools in other leagues, that number grows to 8 nationwide. It's also routine that campuses host 50 to 75,000 additional fans who take part in the fanfare around the stadium with tailgating and other activities. Nowhere else in the world do you see that volume of fans in such consistency. If you follow college athletics, you know we love top 25 rankings. In a list of the largest sport venues by capacity, college football in America accounts for 8 of the top 10 globally. Yet rarely do any of these events register on the SEER rating system higher than a 4 or 5, meaning they have limited national importance to require federal interagency support. If I can just pause on that note for a second. The largest events that are hosted in this country on a consistent basis currently do not qualify for federal interagency support. I work with my colleagues at our member institutions to identify emerging challenges to their operations, and I'd like to share a few of those with you today. These topics fall in the category of what keeps you up at night. Vehicle mitigation. Campus environments are full of soft targets with tailgates and team walks surrounding the stadium. A bad actor with a vehicle has become a hallmark of modern crowd attacks. Unfortunately, we saw that play out on January 1st in New Orleans as fans prepared to enjoy the Sugar Bowl. As has been mentioned multiple times today already, the UAS or drone threat. The proliferation of drones in modern warfare has exacerbated that concern, and for that threat at full stadiums across the country. As it stands, our schools can spend upwards of $500,000 on drone tracking technology, but they have no legal authority to intervene or mitigate a hostile drone. We're encouraged by the efforts of both the Senate and the House to introduce legislation that would allow federal agencies to deputize local officials with the authority to mitigate drone threats with the proper training and the access to the advanced technology. And finally, access to intelligence, staffing, equipment, and funding resources that modernize the public safety posture at our events. In closing, to put it simply, the key to public safety is communication, transparency among agencies, and access to the appropriate resources. As this committee evaluates the role of the federal government in supporting the host efforts for large public gatherings, please remember the schools, venues, promoters, and local officials hosting large gatherings on a nightly and weekly basis throughout the calendar year. And please consider a review of the methodology of establishing a SEER rating. We're encouraged by the work of this committee and the collaboration and communication that will usher in some progress. Thank you.
Mr. Hammond, thank you for your opening statement. We're honored to have you here and each of our people here before us. Doesn't matter if you're a cat, a tiger, a dog, a volunteer, whether you scream War Eagle or Roll Tide, every one of our conferences definitely have a task to provide safety for America. Members will be recognized by order of seniority for their 5 minutes of questioning. An additional round of questioning may be called after all members have been recognized. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for questioning. I'd like to begin by asking each of you, starting with Sheriff Barnes, what can Congress and the federal government do to better support security preparedness at mass gathering events going forward?
Thank you, Congressman. First, The collaboration among federal partners is key. The fusion centers and the funding that drive them, I think, is necessary to maintain that, and I would even probably argue for an increase. Counter-UAS capabilities, I think, is going to be an imperative going forward, as mentioned before. Currently, we can probably speak for an hour about the risks that we have experienced by drones in our different areas of responsibility. For example, in Orange County, we had an individual flying drones within hundreds of feet from departing aircraft from John Wayne Airport. Any one of those impacts would have undoubtedly placed that jet at risk and all its passengers. Fortunately, that was adopted by the U.S. Attorney's Office. He was prosecuted, but we had no way to mitigate that drone or locate it. We found him through social media as he's posting his footage online. If not for that, we probably would not know who that person was. We've had narcotics trafficking with drones into our jails. We had them intervene with emergency response during wildland fires. And sadly, if you followed the recent news, the cartels, a foreign terrorist organization, are using drones and counter-drone technology against the United States. The cartels have advanced forward of local law enforcement's capabilities, and we should anticipate that those technologies will make their way, CONUS, inside the United States and probably be a significant factor in any one of these events as bad actors use these technologies against us for legal law enforcement overwatch efforts during any of these venues. And lastly, I would say that funding is critical. Uwashi, Shish Gap, Operation Stone Garden, which I do on behalf of the federal government's western border of the United States, which is being impacted with maritime traffic again as a result of the lockdown of the border. All of those have a significant issue, but interagency collaboration, I think, is most important. We all have to be at the table, and we have to be operating on the same common operating platform, whether it's NIMS, SEMS, or ICS, and make sure we have defined roles in a unified command, working with our private sector partners, I would add, to make sure we put all this in a good place, and we are ahead of the planning stage now, and that needs to start today. We can't do these things, a year from now. We're already behind the curve when it comes to counter-UAS technologies and other planning.
Thank you, Mr. Junell.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with the sheriff on intelligence sharing, fusion centers, collaboration. Any support to streamline the efforts would be greatly appreciated from the private sector as well as the government sectors. But streamlining particularly the response capabilities to UAS threats, if we could streamline the process, understand who is eligible, lower the thresholds to where we can cover more events. Anything to do to streamline the process would be greatly appreciated amongst all the shareholders.
Thank you. Mr. Hammond?
Yes, I think two priorities from our perspective. One, a reevaluation of the SEER rating system, developing some additional consistency there in those directives. And then, as my counterparts here have stated, streamlining that process to allow local authorities to mitigate the drone threat. I think those are the two most pressing issues on the minds of our public safety officials on campus.
As we prepare for to host these high-profile events, and some are every weekend, each of you're involved in this, is it essential that the federal government double down on planning and collaboration with state, local law enforcement?
I would say triple down, Congressman. We are already behind the curve. These investments need to take place now, and keep in mind all these things are happening. FIFA World Cup, for example, you mentioned it, 11 locations, 7 events over a prolonged period of time. The one other aspect we have is a drain on resources. We still have CONOPS, continuity operations, still has to happen within all of our agents to do the everyday job that we're expected to do. So yes, it needs to happen now, and we need to get ahead of it today.
Thank you. Mr. Junell, we have seen too many concerts and sporting events become the target of terrorist attacks. Can you describe Live Nation's role in working with law enforcement and host venues to ensure adequate security for event attendees and artists and athletes?
Yes, Chairman Strong. We work very closely with our law enforcement partners on a nationwide basis. Everything from the planning, communication, coordination, joint understanding of risk, shared situational awareness, highly encourage co-location during the events, sharing intelligence, fusion centers, as the sheriff mentioned earlier, the incident command system, to make sure that we're all on the same page and able to plan for the foreseeable risk and be resilient to those risks that may not be foreseen.
Thank you. I now recognize Ranking Member Kennedy for 5 minutes for any questions he may have.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Sheriff Barnes, thank you again for being here today. In your testimony, you make the case for sustained federal investment in Homeland Security funding. As you've mentioned already, that funding is critical, including $61 million through State Homeland Security Program, $156 million through the Urban Area Security Initiative, and $2 million through Operation Stone Garden in fiscal year 2024 in order to prepare for FIFA World Cup and the Olympics around the corner. Can you just discuss how the threat prevention and response capabilities enabled by these FEMA programs have helped your community proactively prepare for these mass events? And separately, how that funding in such a robust manner helps these programs in California and New York prepare for these upcoming mass gatherings?
Yes, thank you, Congressman. First, the funds that are being provided through those three initiatives specifically are essential in maintaining our posture of the 80 fusion centers nationally. Our HIDA programs are different funding, but that's been stagnant, has a significant risk. Operation Stone Garden, I already mentioned what would happen, but I'm going to turn the corner. Without those funds, this is what will happen. We have to step back from our posture in our fusion centers, which I think has been the most beneficial national security initiative that we maintained over the last 24 years, or 22 years since 2003 when they were stood up. Operation Stone Garden stops. We don't protect our borders and other initiatives that we have with those funds. So without those funds, for example, I fund majority of my fusion center out of local taxpayer dollars. It subsidizes some of that program, but the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center is 100% funded through FEMA grant opportunities, Shishgap and Uwasi. That means that program stops. And they have a major initiative happening throughout the FIFA World Cup. That means no intelligence, no vetting, no collaboration that would happen in that area and other areas like it. So we've taken a huge step back of keeping our nation safe. And I'll tell you, these have worked well because nothing bad has happened. We've intervened, interdicted, acted left of bang in numerous circumstances that has kept our country safe. This is not the time to step away from those programs.
Thank you very much. Sheriff, again, a critical part of preparing for these mass events is ensuring that first responders have what they need to in the event of an emergency. DHS programs train first responders so they can respond more efficiently and effectively. Troublingly, the Trump administration has closed the National Fire Academy in Maryland, one of the nation's premier training facilities for first responders. And his proposed budget would eliminate the National Domestic Preparedness Consortium, a group of 7 nationally recognized organizations that provide training for FEMA and first responders. So, Sheriff, this program is hosting several trainings in the greater Orange County area next month, dedicated to sport and special event evacuation and protective actions. As you prepare for the 2028 Olympics, how might these expert trainings help the first responder and law enforcement community in Orange County?
Thank you again. I will tell you that I will not speak how they would retrospectively, they have been beneficial in our response platforms and protocols. The American public never sees what we do behind the scenes, and if we do it well, they never do see what we do behind the scenes because we invested in these infrastructures and planning and logistics and resources and training, and all that happens in the shadows. But you can't step up or stand up a team to be responsive on the fly. It has to happen in real time, multi-agency collaboration, which we do routinely with our partners in firefighting and other venues and platforms. So it is an investment to be ready to respond. Hopefully that we don't need to, but this is also a huge investment on resources and personnel that have to be on the ready, standing in reserve in response to these venues, and it's been that way for decades.
Thank you, Sheriff. And as you likely know, we have a Department of Homeland Security secretary who stated that this administration's intent is to eliminate FEMA. Are you concerned about the impact that might have on Orange County that you represent and the state of California, as well as our responsiveness across the nation?
Yes, and once again, that is a great question. Obviously, I'm going to hypothesize, but if we start to draw back on these investments, whether it be in Orange County, California, nationally, we're turning a corner, and we're actually, I would say, inviting something bad to happen without our ability to be responsive or to interdict prior to that act happening. So I would say this is not the time that we should be backing away from these investments. We need to maintain our posture of readiness across the nation.
Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
The ranking member yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Chairman, Ranking Member. Thank you, of course, to all of our witnesses for coming. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record this statement from the Association of Uncrewed Vehicle Systems International that includes some security recommendations for mass gathering events that empower local law enforcement.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank you to the witnesses. My first question will be to Mr. Barnes. I spent a combined total of a little over 2 decades in between both military and law enforcement. On the Army side, I was a Black Hawk helicopter pilot, so operating in the same airspace as a lot of the new and emerging UAS threats that we're facing, both overseas and also fighting fires and all of the things that we use in the domestic operations space here in the United States. And then as a police officer, I got to lead our mobile field force. And so I've been that user-level, boots-on-the-ground individual that's operating and having to make real-time decisions whenever we have either mass gathering events that were anticipated or if you have contingencies that emerge in mass gathering events. And so my first question to you, I think we've talked a little bit about fusion centers and a lot of the pre-planning and intelligence that comes out of facilities like that. Can you talk a little bit more about the tactical level? You've done your pre-planning, the event is now in full swing. What are those critical shortcomings at the tactical level, specifically focusing on either equipment shortfalls, training shortfalls, communication shortfalls during an event that would potentially impact your ability to operate efficiently with other federal, state, and local partners?
Thank you. And first of all, thank you for your service. Your question is a good one. You look at preparedness, and from a tactical perspective, you mentioned mobile field force. Mobile field force should be a national standard for crowd control and maintaining order within our communities. We've heavily invested in mobile field force in the County of Orange and trained all the municipal agencies on mobile field force tactics and response protocols, and it's worked very well for us. From tactics, first starts with intelligence, getting good information. We know there's dis, and malinformation campaigns we should expect over the next several years, so getting good information in and being able to be responsive to that. There's a huge drain on resources when you have a tactical element in reserve for a prolonged period of time, I think we can agree. And there's other resources like bomb detection canines and others that work in tandem with them that have a limited utility that you have to replicate at a much larger platform. So tactics, rapid response models, I think are very key. Ability to have them ready to go out, but we just don't have the depth. So I think investing in that now ahead of time and making sure as a national standard we have these protocols in place. I've stressed for a long time through FEMA to have resource tasking for law enforcement. It's not as deep as it should be. Look at all the critical issues we have to face on a broad risk environment that we have to be prepared for.
Thank you. And continuing down that train, I've done a lot of the federal training in places like Anniston, Alabama, to make sure that we have that interoperability at the federal, state, and local level. What do you see as far as communication shortfalls with folks in your sheriff's office potentially having to work and collaborate in real time with folks from other agencies, particularly with regard to the communication equipment?
Well, thank you for that question again, Congressman. I'll start with Orange County has had an interoperable radio system for decades. 3.1 million people, all the law enforcement agencies can communicate at the same time or a dedicated channel. That technology should be at least strive to advance it nationally or minimally have our federal partners in the same room on the same communications conduit so we're sharing information in real time for the benefit of everybody. That has not always been the case. We saw that happen in Parkland High School, in Uvalde, recently in Butler. We have learned a lot about what we need to do. We just have to make sure we solve that problem before we go forward and make sure we're on the same communication platform.
Thank you. And I got 1 minute and 5 seconds left. So final question again will be to you, Sheriff, but drawing on some of the comments from others about UASs and TFRs. So flying on wildfires, of course, you have a TFR that's going to be dropped over the wildfire area so that crews like myself can go out and do our jobs. And then you still have drones that come through. You got to shut down the fire TFR, ground all of the aircraft until we can chase the drone out. On that, again, tactical user level, what do you think are the most critical shortcomings to be able to actually kinetically intervene in real time in the event that you have malicious drone activity occurring?
I'll start with the FAA Reauthorization Act or legislation that would give local law enforcement or public safety the authority to have that. If you look forward into FIFA, there's not a depth for counter-UAS that can manage this at a national scale. I would say task force operators and locals that have dual designation and training, technology, and access to the platforms are most critical. You look at what happened with the Palisades fire. They took one of the most beneficial firefighting apparatus out of the sky because of an impact with the drone for 3 days that could have contributed to a lot of structures being saved. So we have to invest now. We can't wait a year or 2 years or when FIFA is on our doorstep. That has to happen now, in my belief. And I think we have the ability to spread that out responsibly through good policy and protocols and have that shared. We have to do it now because the cartel is already ahead of us, and we're going to be dealing with this domestically if we don't prepare for it. Not to mention, if there's a mass drone attack, a mass weaponized drone attack, we cannot be responsive to that. I'm sorry I went long, but the threat horizon is much broader, and it's advancing beyond our capabilities if we don't get in this game today.
Thank you. Yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman from Colorado yields. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. McKenzie, is recognized for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate everybody being here today to discuss such a serious topic about how we can protect our communities and individuals who are attending mass gatherings from terrorist attacks and other threats. My first question, I'd like to go to Mr. Junell from Live Nation Entertainment. We are fortunate to have a venue that is being operated in coordination with Live Nation in our local community. Now it's a mid-sized venue, I would characterize it. So can you please talk to what in particular you are doing for events like that maybe not the high-profile events for the World Cup or anything like that, but communities like mine are hosting music events and gatherings on a regular basis. Tell me about what you're doing at mid-sized events like that.
Yes, regardless of the size of the event, the concern is the same. We want to make sure that we're prepared as can be. We're trained, facilitating all the intelligence sharing and everything else through our federal, state, and local law enforcement partners, and working highly in a collaborative process to make sure that we have the standards, we have a clear picture of the issues that we're dealing with, understanding what our roles and responsibilities are, and then what our partners will be bringing to the table as well, so that we have that robust resilience around the event, regardless of the size.
Thank you. And for all of our testifiers, then obviously the attention of our country is going to shift next year to the America 250, the World Cup, other big events like that are taking place all across our country. So for anybody on the panel, do you feel that we are prepared at this point, or is there more work that needs to be done? And if so, is it resources, training? What can we assist with from federal level and as members of Congress?
I think we're working towards being prepared. Those plannings are being put, committees are in place, and the collaboration started, especially on FIFA and also the Olympics. Club Cup is coming next year. That brings a different clientele to the country that's different than the FIFA World Cup. And they have a tendency to operate outside social norms that we might consider in America, taking to the streets, levels of intoxication, celebrations, fan fest, what might be problematic. So yes, we are in the planning stages, but it takes resources. I look at that not as a cost, it's an investment into the planning, the preparedness, the logistics, the training, the tactics, the equipment. All of those things need to start happening now, else we'll be behind the curve when the time comes to be responsive and keeping our public safe.
And do you feel at this point in time that we are on track to be ready for those events?
I think we are in the planning stage, which for the Olympics, I think we're on track. I think there's already been some pre-planning on the Olympics with the Los Angeles City and County that has had advanced teams look at what's happening in Paris and others. The threat environment has changed and it's ever evolving, so we have to be dynamic and we look at mitigating the threats as they change over time, and they will change between now and 2028. And we have to stay ahead of the curve and make sure that we are well planned and well prepared to take whatever threat comes next, especially in the area of cyber. We should anticipate the cyber threat advancing well beyond our capabilities. Not picking on the administration, but stepping away from cyber at this time and putting it on the shoulders of locals. We're going to have different response capabilities across the country and who can interdict, intervene, and be responsive to cyber attacks, DDoS attacks, whatever it might be, that's going to change. Not to mention traditional attacks like bomb threats and swatting incidents, and then intentional attacks and the normal crime that comes with these events. All of these things make this a very complex solution that needs to be implemented over a prolonged period of time. It's not doing any one thing, it's doing 100 things simultaneously. It's going to put us in a position of preparedness. And that has started, but I think we have a long way to go.
Well, again, I'd like to thank all of you. All law enforcement across the country put themselves in harm's way every single day. We appreciate that work that you do and the preparedness that we are looking for as a country. I think we are in many ways on track. I know there are some things that we want to continue to work on. As you mentioned, threats evolve and the nature of those threats change with time, and so we got to continue to stay on top of those as we prepare for an incredible year next year, again, celebrating America's 250 and also welcoming people from around the world for the World Cup. So thank you again, and with that, I yield back.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Correa, for 5 minutes of question.
Chairman Strong, thank you very much, and for our ranking member, Mr. Kennedy, thank you for this hearing, and want to welcome our witnesses today, Sheriff Barnes from our good Orange County, Mr. Junell, Mr. Hammond. Sheriff Barnes, let me turn to you first. Orange County vibe, Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, the Olympics, the World Cup, the Angels. You got a lot to defend, sir. And so far, I think the other guys have scored 0 on you, so good job. How serious is the threat of international terrorism to you?
Congressman Correa, thank you very much, and I appreciate your partnership over the years. Not just international terrorism, foreign terrorist organizations, CT, domestic terrorism, homegrown violent extremist groups are ever present. Again, going back to the Fusion Center, I have a Fusion Center committed to Orange County, the Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center, one of the 80 nationally routinely recognized for our product and intervention strategies. All those things are happening in real time, and not to say that bad things have been mitigated, but the last 4 years, unfortunately, through the border have undoubtedly let bad actors into our country. Without getting into any classified information, we know that we are looking for people, CONUS, who may be accelerating their plans because of actions in immigration, trying to locate them. It is a completely different threat horizon that we've ever faced. And so, yes, there are a lot of...
Sheriff Barnes, if I may interrupt you, you talk about this Fusion Center, and I've had the opportunity to go tour it. That's a center where you take information from all sources, international, domestic, state, local, and you put that together, and it gives you a picture of the threat environment. Is that correct?
Yes, and I would say when Fusion Center stood up post 9/11, they were focused on foreign terrorism abroad. They are all crimes, all hazards now. Our Fusion Center is focused on domestic terrorism, bad actors, extremist groups, narcotics trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking. It's looking at everything. And so...
And now you've got on top of that unmanned aerial, small aircraft. You said propaganda, misinformation, artificial intelligence. Those are on top of the other things you're doing. That's what the Fusion Centers have to challenge to deal with?
Yes, Congressman, it is an all-inclusive risk mitigation center. And for the benefit of not just the region, the state, but the nation, we're putting product out for everybody and sharing that information among Fusion Centers with our partners to make sure everybody's well informed of what the threats are and how they're evolving.
So if we want to play linebacker for you, make sure nobody scores, what is it that you would see from us? More funding, legislative action to give you more authority, for example, maybe to control, take down aerial drones?
Exactly that, Congressman. Maintaining the funding for the Fusion Centers through Shishkap, Uwasi, Stone Garden, and other avenues for funding. The HIDAs, which is a different funding source, I think is not sufficient. Dealing with the worst time in our nation's history of narcotics trafficking, which does have a direct threat to these venues through users consuming products that are clandestine produced and probably fentanyl. And also the technology. The technology needs to keep up with the times, and we, I think, we're playing defense, and I don't like playing defense. I want to be in the offense. So giving us the technology that we can intervene appropriately if any of these things do happen through counter-UAS or other venues, we need to be prepared for that.
You mentioned earlier that you would want us to triple down on federal funding for your Fusion Center. Is that correct?
I think we need to not step away, but I think there's opportunities to invest larger. If I lose those funding, my fusion center is going to take a significant hit on some of the all crimes, all hazards. And this is not just for Orange County. This is across the nation. There's benefit.
So you're speaking for the nation as a whole when you talk about funding, fusion centers, coordination with the federal government, all that takes resources that you need and other sheriffs across the country need to keep Americans safe.
Not just sheriffs. If you look at the fusion center network as it operates, there isn't any major city chief that operates outside of a major county based on definition. All the venues that are being proposed are happening in major counties or major cities that are represented and supported by the Fusion Center network. And especially for the FIFA World Cup and Club Cup, the connectivity and sharing of real-time information among that venue, which we did through the elections recently, has to happen in real time as these threats present themselves, because they're likely to be replicated in other areas as bad actors share their tactics to try to bring this country down and do harm.
Sheriff, I want to thank you for your time, for your efforts in being here, informing us here in Congress about the needs that you have on Main Street. Makes us better policymakers. Thank you very much. Hope to talk to you soon again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman Correa.
The gentleman from California yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from New Jersey, Ms. Poe, for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman. It's wonderful to be back on this committee. Thank you. And thank you to our ranking member, Kennedy, for also holding this meeting. I'd like to begin by certainly indicating that, mass gatherings are unique opportunities to connect with others and feel like we are a part of something bigger than ourselves. Especially after the pandemic, there has been a renewed appreciation for the value of a sold-out ball game or concert. The FIFA World Cup will bring together hundreds of thousands of fans. It is a time for friendship and celebration, and I am so proud that the final match will be played in my district in New Jersey. I was recently named the co-chair of a new bipartisan task force focused on enhancing security for special events like the World Cup. And I look forward to the chairman calling our first official meeting and beginning our work. With that being said, I'd like to begin my questioning and indicate that, as my district, as I've just mentioned, ratchets up for security preparation for the World Cup, our first responders and municipalities need resources today to plan for next year. I am deeply concerned by the Trump administration's illegal withholding or otherwise delaying critical FEMA and anti-terror grants. These delays seriously undermine the ability of state and local government to protect our communities and ensure that large sporting events like the World Cup are safe and secure. Last week, I pressed Secretary Noem on when our communities will receive guidance on the Homeland Security Grant Program. Unfortunately, she did not give me an answer. So, Sheriff Barnes, how do delays in critical grant funding like the State Homeland Security Grant Program or the Urban Area Security Initiative impacts your department's ability to keep communities safe, especially as they prepare for high-profile events like the World Cup that I've just mentioned?
Yes, thank you for the question. First, there's an adage in anything we do, you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So planning is everything, and preparedness goes into many facets of equipment, tactics, training, tools, tabletop exercises, red teaming these events so we make sure that we're thinking like our adversaries. That's all very critical, and that planning needs to start today. Regarding the FIFA World Cup, there's one aspect, and I love the partnerships we have with our private sector representatives here, but a lot of the response protocols are beyond the venue itself. There's practice sites, hotels, other things, and areas that grow beyond that are contemporaneous to the actual event, but spill over into local neighborhoods, communities, maybe even those beyond your congressional district that need to be protected, and the planning that goes into that as well. And those take resources. Funding is essential. If we don't have the offset, this is a planned event. It doesn't qualify for most mutual aid plans, which means there's no reimbursement unless it's financed or funded up front for the ability to recover costs in planning. That needs to take place, in my opinion, today to put those funds and make those funds available for the planning stage.
Thank you. I can't agree with you more. Thank you so very much for your answer. You know, I'd also would want to speak about the homegrown violent extremists and domestic terrorists that preys on events like the World Cup that brings together different communities. That is why our New Jersey Office of Homeland Security identified attacks from these groups as the highest threat to New Jersey. Earlier this year, I traveled to New Orleans with the chairman and with some of our other colleagues here to learn about the devastating attack on Bourbon Street carried out by Homeland extremists. During this trip, we heard from local law enforcement about the threats our nation faces from homegrown terrorism at highly attended events. Sheriff Barnes, if you would please, what are the unique threats posed by the homegrown extremists and domestic terrorists to mass gatherings, events, and how are you working to combat these threats?
Yes, thank you. I think you mentioned several of those already. Vehicle rammings. They're mostly spontaneous actors that are not even on the grid or even known to either federal authorities or locals. So spontaneous bad actors are an evolving trend that we're seeing. Some of these people weren't even had a case open or even had any threats. Open source information is important. That's why the Fusion Centers play such a critical role. They're oftentimes tripwire events that we see immediately prior to postings or some things that happen on open source information like social media. And going back after 9/11, reinvigorated the See Something, Say Something campaign that worked so well several decades ago. So people who do have information that of individuals can be brought to the attention of law enforcement. But I'd preface all of this with, first and foremost, the protection of First Amendment rights. When people do decide to take the streets and protest responsibly or have actions, we are always focused on constitutional rights of our citizenry first, but have to be prepared when it crosses over into illegal activities to keep our nation safe.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Johnson, for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. As a member of Congress serving the city of Dallas, you can see I'm very interested in the FIFA World Cup. And this will bring in millions of dollars of revenue for small businesses and surrounding communities and millions of new visitors to the North Texas area and from around the world. We are thrilled to be hosting 9 matches, which is the largest amount of matches in the country. We're also the broadcast hub for the FIFA World Cup. And so it's going to become not only a unique, it's a sustained security need that we have, because we're going to have media professionals throughout the world in the city for a prolonged period of time, not just for the unique timelines of the matches themselves. I was thrilled to have the opportunity to travel with you, Mr. Chairman, to New Orleans and with some of my colleagues on this committee in advance of the Super Bowl. And we saw an immense amount of planning that goes into these events to keep attendees safe. Meanwhile, Secretary Noem and President Trump are expected to propose significant cuts to the FEMA preparedness grants and funding that is critical for major event security. The proposed budget also eliminates the National Domestic Preparedness Consortium, which has trained thousands of emergency response teams. In just my district alone, they have trained almost 12,000 participants. These programs not only train our local first responders at no cost to them or our cities, but also partner with the Center for Domestic Preparedness, FEMA, and other governmental agencies. When we do not have adequate funding to keep these programs afloat, we will not have the workforce to keep the public safe. By cutting funding to these programs, this administration is setting our cities up for failure and putting the lives of attendees and our security personnel at risk. The World Cup is anticipated to bring in more than 6 million visitors from around the world in a time where cybersecurity workforce is significantly understaffed and cyber attacks are on the rise. Illegal freezes on grant funding and TSA agents are being terminated, and we need to take a serious look at how prepared we actually are at just 1 year before the event takes place. I look forward to working alongside my colleagues to ensure every step of the way. And Mr. Chairman, I'm just really concerned that this Congress right now, while having this hearing is fabulous, we need to focus on the security of our country. We want to have a successful Olympics. We want to have a successful World Cup. And we had the chance to see up close and personal just how much goes into the planning of the Super Bowl. It was an enlightening experience to see just the effort, the expense, and the coordination that's required amongst so many agencies. And while we're shining that, we're talking about it, which is fabulous. But on the other hand, in this very building, in the rules debate in our Capitol, we're having a budget that guts all the funding for it. So how can we do that? How can we gut all the funding and then still say we are prioritizing this security? So, gentlemen, my question for you is, what potential threats do you see, and do you have enough resources? Do you think that we have allocated enough resources for this country and the visitors to come here to be safe when they come for World Cup?
Congresswoman, whether it's the World Cup, the Super Bowl, a large festival, or a smaller festival, we all share the same concerns. What's concerning at this moment is the threat persists from UAS, and at this time, the thresholds are too high. The authority to act upon the threats are very limited, and we just need a streamlined process to help facilitate the protection that is warranted for them.
I want to ask you a question about that. So at a different hearing, or actually maybe when we were in New Orleans, one of the things that was brought up to us was the lack of local law enforcement's ability to actually deal with the drones. You had to go through just this crazy red tape in order to take down a potential threat. Is that still in place? Has that been corrected? And are you aware of efforts on the table to correct that?
So the FAA Reauthorization Act was a step in the right direction, but it is implemented inconsistently across all the different events. And having the ability to work with venues, to work with our law enforcement partners, to be able to successfully apply for a TFR is challenging. And then whether or not the federal resources are available from the agencies, and then whether or not FAA approves, it's a complicated process that really needs some attention to streamline and make more consistent across all the events.
Do you feel, and it's Live Nation, you see lots of stuff, I can only imagine, and you see all the things. So besides, drones, and besides this lack of coordination between the agencies to give the men on the ground the ability to deal with an immediate threat, besides that issue, what other security threat issues are you concerned with, in particular to these large-scale events that are coming up?
Yeah, of course. It's homegrown violent extremists, it's terrorism, it's just crime in general. Managing large crowds, it's all the things that my colleagues have spoken about today, and making sure that we have coordinated, collaborated plans in partnership with all of our stakeholders to include federal, state, and local partnerships. And we're all singing from the same sheet of music with planning, operations, and response.
Yes, and then at the same time, we're laying off record numbers of FBI agents, and we're going to make our country less safe. Gentlemen, I think my time has expired, and thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentlewoman from Texas yields back. I thank Sheriff Barnes, Mr. Junell, and Mr. Hammond for their valuable testimony, and the members for their questions. The members of the subcommittee may have some additional questions for the witnesses, and we would ask the witnesses to respond to these in writing. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7D, the hearing record will be held open for 10 days. Without objection, this subcommittee stands adjourned.